Now we're ready to sew the side seams of the bodice. You're going to have the outside fabric lined up right sides together. Sew down only the side seam. Do not do the top shoulder, just the side seams. And then I generally go from the outside fabric side seam to the lining side seam, and then I bring the other lining side seam around, sew down that, and again we're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, not a 1/4 inch, not a 5/8 inch, exactly 1/2 inch please. That helps us control the sizing when we're in our marketplace trying to help missionaries know what size a dress is. If we all use different size seams, then we have a little problem up there. Once you've made it down all 4 side seams, I want you to leave together the join between the lining and the outer fabric. Now that I'm done with it, I'm just laying it out on the table to talk about what that path looked like when I was sewing. So here I started in this point, went down, then down the right fabric or outside fabric, then I went down the side seam of the liner, then I bent it around like that, went down that side of the liner, and from that side of the liner, so here's the path, the overall path. It helps to see it when it's all laid out, I think. By doing this, they are connected so that you won't have trouble later on getting them paired back up again. You can see how easy it is just to pick them up and tuck one inside the other. And you won't need to have pins right there at the side seam if you've done a continuous stitch from one to the other. You don't have to do this, but it's just a preferred method I like to use. And I thought I might as well take time and show you how I do it. All right, now I'm going to turn it back the other way for a moment. Laying it flat because we need to compare size. We have to make sure that the liner fits inside the outer fabric, and I'm going to just recommend that you double check the cutting first before you even sew. I should have done that and I didn't. So you're going to see the results of me not checking. I'm going to have to re-stitch. So right here, if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see that my bodice is bigger than the liner, which is meaning I'm going to end up with some puckers on the outside of the dress, which does not look nice. So we're not going to do that on We Sew Love Garments. We're going to do them correctly. So here I'm going to take a look at where I need to make my fix. I'm going to measure from side to side. I have to center the bodice and the 2 pieces for the bodice, the liner and the right side fabric. We can't just do a quick, let's chop off one underarm to make the measurement the same. It's important that the body pieces stay symmetrical. So I'm going to have to do a little bit off of both sides. And you'll see I'm sort of lining up my seams to figure out where best to remove fabric. And I'll use my scissor and just make a small slip off of each side of that exterior bodice. And of course, sadly, I'm going to have to remove it, separate it. And I'm right now using a really great trick. I'm cutting every 3rd or 4th stitch using my scissor. You could use a seam ripper. I just didn't happen to have mine handy for the video. And when you just cut that string about that close to each other, flip it over, grab the other side, and it'll come right out. Of course, my string was short, so I couldn't grab it easily, but see that? How quick and easy is that? So, you know, when you have a short seam like that, removing it isn't that big of a deal. The reason I remove it and don't just re-stitch, I wouldn't be able to iron it flat, and that makes a lumpy seam in the underarm, so let's not do that either. Go ahead and just remove your stitching. It's okay. It happens even, I mean, I've done lots of these dresses and it happened to me, so you can know it's probably going to happen to you as well. All right, so before we sew the bodice together, we have to insert these straps. So what I'm going to do, I tip this back, feed the strap up, and I'm going to do 2 straps at a time. Now, you are going to be doing a 1/2 inch seam. Do not do a 1/4 inch seam here. If you're using a serger, you need to cut off a 1/4 inch as you serge that other 1/4 inch. So here we go. I have a ruler because of centimeters, that's not going to work. We'll use this guy. We're going to make sure that I am in a 1/2 inch. So a 1/2 inch just turns out to be this white line right here. I'm going to pin the seam side of the strap right there at the 1/2 inch. Please take time to measure it, and if nothing else, make a little cheat mark on your ironing board or somewhere. If you don't like having to measure it over and over, that's fine and understandable. Now 1/2 inch on this one. It's not one of the manufacturer lines, so I'm just marking it with my pencil. And you're just going to line up the raw edge of the strap with the raw edge at the top of that bodice. Pin this down. You could, if you'd like, you could stay stitch this at about a 1/4 inch so that they stay put and you don't have to have pins in your project. That's up to you. I would recommend that for anybody who is doing a serger on these bodices, because pins are not your friend on the serger. Now I'm going to transfer my pin, and I am going to put it this way so I can leave it in as I sew. And since I have my measuring tool handy, I'm going to mark where my pivot point is. That saves me a little bit of work. Now that I have everything pinned together and marked, I'm simply sewing around the top edge of the bodice, sewing the lining to the outside fabric, getting to my corners very carefully, making sure my needle is down right on that pivot point. Even if it means I have to pick up the foot and move it just a little bit, that precision shows when you turn the project. It looks so nice when the straps are right there in the corner. All right, I'm using, again, a 1/2 inch exactly. Not a 3/8 inch, not a 5/8 inch, not a 1/4 inch, exactly a 1/2 inch. Again, this just helps us keep our sizes accurate in the marketplace. So we appreciate your willingness to help us with that. My side seams, you'll notice, are pressed open, and I'm talking about that, but there was so much noise from the sewing machine, so I'm now doing a voiceover. And you don't need to worry if some of the stitches have come out at the end of that seam, because we're coming across it with a very secure stitch. It's a good idea at this point to be using, if your machine measures stitch length by 1, 2, 3, and 4, then you're going to want to be at about a 2 or a 2.5. If you have an older machine that measures stitches per inch, then you're going to want to be at 12 stitches to the inch. You could go 14. Something nice and tight really makes a secure seam for this particular piece of the garment. And when we're going to have to come back and do clipping and things like that, you want those stitches nice and close to each other. It also helps when you're using a small stitch. You tend to land right on that pivot point quite frequently, so there's several reasons for going that route. Now that we have sewn all the way around the top edge of our bodice, we've attached the straps, and I'm checking them to make sure they didn't tip in the sewing process, because if they did, now is the time for me to fix that. It looks like they were good. And you'll notice in the video, I had one, I took my pin out too soon and it tipped, but I noticed it and I fixed it at that time. Very important. If they are tipped, you're just going to need to release the stitching, get it aligned properly. Then when you start stitching, you're going to start back here, because you can never ever start stitching in a corner. That does not work. So you'll just start, you know, a good inch, inch and a half up to the corner, turn, go, you know, go a good distance. Thread is cheap. I'll get you more if you need it. Let's just go way over where we had some good stitching, and that's how you fix it. Very quick and easy. Now, what do we do next? We have got to get this piece to be happy about being turned inside out, which means, for example, this fabric on that side of the line is going to have to be inside the garment, right? Well, you can see that's not going to go really well. There's all kinds of stress that's going to happen. In addition, in the corners, when this comes inside and that comes inside, look what we have, a lump, a big fat lump of fabric. We are going to eliminate all this trouble. So you're just going to get your good scissors and trim away the bulk from those corners. I like to come at an angle, not just do a 45-inch cut or a 45-degree cut. Go ahead and just, you know, get rid of the bulk. Angle, 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 angle. Now, how do we deal with that inside curve that's going to become an outside curve? We're going to, and I can't really do them both at the same time because there are some minor variances as you sew your way around. As much as possible, you're trying to be a 1/2-inch seam, but you know, sometimes steering isn't perfect. And you're just going to do these every 1/4 inch. Get close to that seam, but do not nick your stitches. If you see that you have, what are we going to do? We're going to start an inch back, go across where we snipped, and go an inch past it. No problem. I do avoid this seam right here. Either side of it is good. If you took home, let's say 10 kits, here's what I would do. I would get all 10 bodices to this stage. Then I would queue up a movie and watch a movie while I clip. I also like to listen to an audio book while I'm sewing. I get a lot of books read that way. Anybody got a good book recommendation? I am interested. I use Libby and Hoopla, so hopefully whatever you recommend would be available there because I don't have to pay. I appreciate our public library system. We could also, instead of doing this, we could be using a pinking shears, but I don't really like how fast mine get dull, and we have some projects where pinking is the only option, so I just clip. All right, now we're going to turn it right way out, and you might have guessed it, we're going to use our iron, so hopefully my girl is still hot. Sometimes they go to sleep on you, which I guess it's a good safety feature, but it's sort of annoying. All right, so get it turned. And if you have a boning tool, you might, I have one. I learned how to do this trick with my fingernail way back in 5th grade, and you know, I did not have a boning tool, so I'm used to doing it this way. Some people like cringe because it reminds them of scratching a chalkboard. So grab your boning tool. Do this before you start ironing, and that will help avoid, I'm going to show you something. This happens frequently. We get them back from the work tables, and if we just ironed right now, look what we've got. We've got a tuck. Let's not do that. Let's not have tucks in them. In many cases, these dresses are going to go someplace where there isn't a mama with an iron, and so we would really like it to be, you know, just done really well. And when they hand wash, I'm telling you, after being in Africa, their laundry comes out so nice and clean. When they did our laundry for us, it was amazing. So don't think these are going to be ruined because they're not being washed in a washer and a dryer. They are going to stay so nice for a long time because they're not hard on them. All right, now it's ready. Let's get the iron. And oh, I just about did it. I only did the one side. I spread it out like that so that I get that seam flat, and then when I come in here, it's not as likely. As you see, sometimes it will still want to do it. But now I've got it. Now she's cooperating with me. So get my iron in here and finalize those creases. Keeping an eye on those straps because they like to get tangled in. Okay. Now, you could wait and iron this when it's all done. However, I'm going to say that I find attaching the skirt so much easier if I have done this. And you'll see why very shortly. Oh, look, I made a mess out of that spot I had already done. No problem. Still got an iron. You see that steam coming out of her? She's doing a good job. So here we go. The bodice is done. And the bodice really is a little more putsy than the rest of the project.